Make sure you guys follow Carl on Instagram and Twitter. Rivals 247 Sports. Carl, so what are you doing now with 247? What's your actual role there now?
Man, covering college football analyst, man, just chasing the stories, chasing the news, trying to stay on top of everything, my brother.
Hell yeah. No doubt.
It's really crazy seeing how much 247 has grown over the years. I remember when I was a high school player, like back in 2011, I know shout out to Steve Wifflong, whatever. He's been there for a long time. And I remember we would check 247 Sports just to kind of see, we were 2-star, 3-star. You know what I'm saying? It's really using that to kind of.
Everybody care about them stars,
Come on now. I've been loving that.
I need another star. Where my stars at, Coach?
Look out for me because that's important. You know what I mean? Everything's a competition. So especially when you're 16, 17 years old, and it's like your teammate, he's a 3-star, you a 2-star. You're like, hold on now, I'm better than him. So now it's really great to see how much the platform has grown. So I love it.
Hey, Carl, so let's get it brass tight. I know I saw your tweet, and then you probably saw mine. My shit takes a lot more heat than most, but I reached out to Trent Dilfer. This Trent Dilfer video is going viral, going off on some coaches. When you look at it as a black man, I asked Smitty this a minute ago because we've all been coaching. Everyone I think knows where I'm from and what I do. I don't think I ever get questioned in this regard, but I've talked to a bunch of coaches, and I talked to Garrett McGee last night for a while, and Garrett kind of laughed it off. But when you see this, what is the first thing you think as a brother? Do you look at it as a brother getting cussed out, or do you look at it as this motherfucker's supposed to do this job, he didn't get it done, and he's getting cussed out by the man that hired the dude that wanted the job, by the way?
No, I don't look at it from a racial standpoint at all, but I know that Trent Dilfer's not a racial guy. He's over emotional, and he does stuff like that all the time. When he shoved the kid that he was coaching in high school, that kid was a white kid. I thought that was wrong. I thought he took that too far, but that kid was a white kid. That's just Trent. But I don't see him. I don't think he would do Warren Sapp like that when he played with Tampa Bay, or he would do Ray Lewis he wouldn't get in their face like that. I just think that you lost control, but I don't see it as a racial thing on either side.
No doubt. So what's your take from this right here? Because I know one of the coaches he was yelling at. I'm gonna be honest. I ain't gonna say nothing, but I bet you he probably screwed up personnel.
Well, so if you screw up personnel in a game, my whole thing is in the heat of the game, we all know that things get said and things happen. That comes part of the profession. But what are you doing to help the situation? To me, you make the situation worse when you respond like that instead of trying to help correct the situation. Maybe he doesn't also know the personnel that's supposed to be in the game. When you're going over practices and situations like that, how can you get it fixed in that moment? And he didn't make the moment better in that situation.
Let me ask you this. So here's my take on it. Like, we all get emotional. We get after it. I look at it like, you've been a head coach for a long time. I've been a head coach for a long time. And the seats we sit in, everyone's bringing up the fact that something went awry. Something happened wrong out there where we got a penalty. We had 10 men on the field. We had 12 men on the field. We had a wrong person, whatever it may be. They're saying Carl Reed's, that's his fucking fault. That's Coach JB's fucking fault. That assistant coach ain't been mentioned one damn time. So I don't think the common fan understands that either unless they've been in our seat. So it goes both ways. And it's emotional. It's a roller coaster of emotions out there.
Well, I tell my coaches all the time, the win and loss record goes next to my name, right? But I know one of the things that people kept tweeting at me yesterday was, well, Nick Saban does this all the time. He does. I guarantee you, though, a couple of things. Number one, he treats everybody the same. He doesn't pick and choose what coach to go after, which player to go after. Number two, in a substitution situation, I guarantee you that Nick Saban can fix it. I guarantee you that on every special team, on offense and defense, every personnel grouping that's supposed to be on the field, he knows who's supposed to be on the field. So it's not just a matter of him cussing everybody out and getting in everybody's face. He actually can come in and fix the situation. And that doesn't appear to be what happened in that case. If they're trying to get it right and you just coming over there and you MFing everybody, that doesn't seem like it helps your team in that situation.
No doubt. Let me transition to this Colorado and Prime deal, man. Where you at with that situation? Are you? I got a bunch of takes on it. I talked to Prime a few times, trying to get him on the show. I got my best friend in the world is on the staff.
He just called me while we just started the show. He just called me.
That's crazy.
Hey, listen. I got a couple takes, and I talked to him, and I've talked to my best friend Darian Hagan's on the staff, and I got a couple players there. So I'm a Prime guy. I think I said it from the gate. I called the TCU win. I said I think you can build Rome in a day now in this current landscape of NIL and transfer portal. I've been saying it for a long time. I took a program at Indy over that hadn't won 3 games in 10 years. We go 5 wins first year. We win the whole thing the next year. I'm like, you can win, especially in this day and age. So I had no ish. I didn't doubt it one bit. Here's the thing I got. Are we setting him up for mass failure, though, with the putting him on the hierarchy of this thing is my number one concern and fear. Because, mainstream media, dog, we're pushing him like crazy on every platform, ESPN, every single buddy talks about him, all the hoopla of everybody joining in and coming to the games. Like, he has to succeed, though, Carl, or now all these cats that are especially fair weather fans, they're going to be like, oh, man, he failed. Do you think he can do, one thing, do you think he can promote the black coach that all of us know is kind of, we're not a lot of them. We want to see a lot more. And we also know that they're probably on a shorter leash, which is, we've been knowing this for a long time. I'm kind of pissed that I got really good friends in this business that until last week were undefeated. I brought it up with Smitty, and Smitty and I got into a debate about it. But Dino Babers was undefeated, brother. My boy Loxley's undefeated, brother. And my boy Franklin James is a brother. I want to see Deion say, hey, man, there's a lot of brothers out here doing well undefeated until last week. And at one point, you had 4 brothers that were all undefeated at one time. They had no losses, Deion and those 3. I want to see Deion use his platform that's the biggest of all coaches and promote the business itself. And so when it does either win or lose in this profession, him and specifically, there's no major fall, because I'm thinking we're setting him up a little bit, and I don't think it's fair to him or the business.
Well, I don't think you can set somebody like him up. I think that he is who he is, and whether you talked about him every day or didn't, the spotlight is going to be the same on him based on who he is and who he comes as. It's just that way. It's very similar. What he has going on right now is very similar to how people felt about Tim Tebow, right? And no matter how well Tim Tebow played or how well he didn't play, he just had a cult-like following. And so Deion has the same type of following that has, to where it doesn't matter if you talk about it. If you don't talk about him, somebody else gonna talk about him. So I don't think you can set him up one way or another. He knows what the expectations are. He knows what his expectations are and what his plan is to get there. In terms of, he definitely wants to help be a person that's helping the black coaches get more opportunities. And he has, and he will invite any black coach who wants to come up there and study and learn and be around his program and help and get a helping hand. I'm sure that he would be open to them coming up to Colorado and visiting with him and using his platform as something that helps their success as well. But I can remember, and I had this conversation with him, and I wrote an article on it a couple weeks ago. One of the things that people would say was, well, since he lost the Celebration Bowl, he's not going to be able to win at the Power 5 level because this coaching was supposed to be so superior and elite. Well, what about if Trey Oliver at North Carolina Central is also just a hell of a coach, and he actually belongs at that level, and he's better than all of them guys too, right? Mm-hmm. And so I looked at it from a completely different perspective. Trey Oliver can coach at North Carolina Central, and he deserves to be in those conversations when we're talking about Power 5 and Group of 5 head coaching jobs.
That's a good point.
That's interesting. I'm kind of similar. I've said it with Smitty. I've had the same situation. I told Smitty, Carl, you know this better than most. You and I both know this. I told Smitty, I said, there's 1,000 primes out there. Motherfucker won't never know us. And I think Prime could set up a cat like me again, bring JB back into the mix, because administrators who are scared to hire a guy like myself, who were scared to hire a guy like Prime in the beginning, because Florida State was signed on him. A lot of cats were scared to hire him too. Now maybe it opens it up for a guy like your boy at North Carolina Central, like the other cats that are out here coaching, like, guy at Grambling and like Hugh, different guys like that. Like I'm just looking at it like that too. So we had a similar thought on that. I kind of look at it the same way.
And then the game is totally different now. You know, this is not the old school. This is transfer portal. This is NIL. This is player marketing. This is Instagram. This is Twitter. This is a completely new world. And so what it took to win back then is not going to be what it takes to win tomorrow. And you see a lot of the old school coaches that are completely exasperated by what they're having to deal with now in terms of the recruiting, in terms of the roster turnover. So it is time to get some fresh blood in there, period.
And real quick, I'm glad you brought that up, Coach. So, like, when you think about just the new era of football, and like you said, with NIL, the transfer portal, and just how even more important I feel like recruiting is now from year to year. Let's say Coach Prime does stay at Colorado for, long term. Let's say, I don't know, call it 5 years from now. How great do you think this Colorado team can realistically become? Like, obviously, we're not expecting no national title or nothing like that in year one, of course. But, like, if he stays there for 5 years, like, would you be shocked if they're in the college football playoffs, and which obviously is going to switch to 12 teams here, I think, next year? Would you be shocked if a couple years you heard Colorado was in the conversation for a natty?
I think that if he stays for 5 years, they will become the epicenter of college football. The amount of kids that are calling and trying to get in there and are trying to visit that weren't even thinking about Colorado before. But it's not just that. The landscape has changed. Under the old landscape, you couldn't have flipped the Colorado program like this. You wouldn't have been able to. You could only sign 25 guys per year, no matter how many guys you lost. You didn't have transfer portal. Guys had to sit out when they transferred. You couldn't have done it like this. In this day and age, it's like somebody asked me about the Michigan State job the other day, and they brought up Mike Elko and Lance Leipold, and people got mad at me because I said, why would they leave Duke and Kansas? Michigan State doesn't offer an advantage for them the way it might have if this was 10 years ago. Tradition doesn't matter anymore. The kids are following Deion to Boulder, Colorado. He doesn't necessarily need to leave and go to another school for them to go to. They're coming to play for him. They're not coming to play for the university. So that's not a bigger draw anymore. Now, I think that what it comes down to over the long term is when you start talking about how much money you get paid, and I think he's going to really push the envelope when you see the financial work that he's brought to that town, to that university. You got to be talking about north of $150 million, moving forward. I mean, that's what his worth is. His worth may be $200 million. It may be more than that when you're talking about the overall value of a contract. But I think that from this standpoint, in this era, if you get the right guy at any school, I think what it shows you is that you can turn around your roster very, very quickly. Going to Alabama or going to Georgia or Auburn, like whatever the name of the school is, not to name any school specifically, it doesn't carry the same weight. It's all about the coach right now and his ability to build a roster, his ability to connect with the kids. It's no longer about the tradition of the school in these kids' eyes.
Let me ask you, Carl, before you leave today. I appreciate you coming on. We got to get together soon. I want to ask you something. What's your current take, doing this for as long as you've been around this for a long time? Both of us done this and seen the different transitions over the years. Let me ask you, if you look at college football right now, what is your biggest takeaway? And I give you kind of a sample size of what I'm saying. I look at it as, I don't believe parity is the same thing as being watered down. I think football is watered down right now at every single level. You think I'm crazy for saying that? I know the kids are talented, Carl, and you deal with these kids, and I know they're fucking unbelievable talents. And I got kid Tank Dell balling for Houston right now in the league. Jermaine Johnson last night obviously showcased, got held in that last play, and they lose. But those are all guys that we had to turn over rocks to find, which we know those guys are out here. They're all over the country. But with the portal and the NIL, I look at it as we've allowed kids to kind of soften their skin, because you and I both came from the tough cloth era where we had to harden our skin and take an ass ripping and do some things that these cats kind of are getting away with not doing. And I believe it hurts the culture at the end of the day. I don't believe that these cats really want to fight through and the coach tells them you're going to register. They enter the portal instead of be like, fuck, let me go get in the weight room. You should
Yeah.
hit the weight room, but you hit the portal. And I know it goes both ways. I know there's shady coaches and liars out there, and I also know there's some soft kids who are being told the wrong thing by their 7-on-7 coach and their mama that don't know shit about football. And we got all this different stuff. Do you look at football right now as parody or watered down?
Well, I agree with you. It's definitely watered down, and let's be honest, it's watered down for a lot of reasons. What the transfer portal has done is you can build a roster quick, but guys are not gonna sit on the bench anymore and wait. And JB, during our day, man, if you didn't like what the coach said, you just had to kind of deal with it and endure. My coach said things to me when I played that he would be in jail for today if he said it today. But I love the guy for it. And I think he changed my life in a lot of positive ways. But if I sat down and talked to a therapist, they would tell me that it was toxic masculinity and that I have mental trauma from the way he treated me. But I think the way he treated me is a large part of my success. So it all depends on who you look at, how you look at it, and who you're talking to and who you're getting your advice from. But I talk to players all the time. I had a kid call me last night from a Power 5 school, already talking about transferring. And I said, well, what's going to change about the situation? Because you take you with you everywhere you go, right? So if you can't play here, what makes you think that you're going to play there? It's not going to improve your situation. So a lot of guys, we had 1,500 to 2,000 guys that didn't even get picked up in the portal last year. It's still guys who went in the portal that haven't found a school to play. And we're about to have another 3,000 kids going to portal this year, and 1,800 of them ain't going to find a new school. So I think that guys need to be a little more careful with the way they handle these scholarships, because the vast majority of them are not good enough to play in the NFL, even though that's their dream. And so that's the first layer of conversation that we got to have. Everybody says, well, I want to go to the league. Well, bro, you're not going to probably go to the league. You can't get on the field at South Dakota State, right? So we shouldn't be talking about transferring at that point. We should be talking about acquiring our education, getting a degree that's going to actually help us in life. But that's not what the conversation is. Everybody else is NFL or bust. You tell a guy to go to a D2 school, then everybody says, yeah, you can still go to the league from a D2 school. Yeah, you can, but if you go in D2, that shouldn't be at the front of your mind. That should be at the back of your mind. At the front of your mind should be the kind of education that you're going to get. But everybody thinks that they're going to buy their mom a house playing football. And I will say this, you don't have to go to the NFL to buy your mom a house. There's a lot of ways you can make a lot of money out here.
I mean, look, nowadays you can do this shit right here we're doing and stuff you doing. And these guys, look at Pat McAfee and look at all these guys that have just blossomed over the last few years. I mean, there's so much money on this internet thing now. It's unbelievable. But let me ask you this. You're dealing with these players every day. Where is it coming from? Is it because you and I as a coach, and then now you're in a different part of this business. It's the same profession, different part of the business. I used to despise the 7-on-7 coach, the trainer, the individual personal trainer guy, because, you and I hated the cross coaching. You're telling him this thing, and then he comes to my school, and I have to coach him and retrain him, and now he's listening to his boy that has him sitting down in a chair and standing up and throwing the ball and shit, all this crazy shit. And I was with Sean Salisbury last night for all day. We just talk about that too. He trains quarterbacks up in Houston. He had Kyler Murray, a couple other guys he's worked with. But we're like, dog, these guys are putting this in their ears, and the mamas are paying $1,000 a session to some of these guys that have not a clue what they're doing. These kids they get into this football world thinking that this is okay, and they're in their head because they think they're their boys. When you and I are their head coaches, telling them, nah, man, it ain't that way in real life. You got to stick some shit out here and learn some tough skin and have some hiccups in the road. Do you see the 7-on-7 thing taking over this business on a street level as far as a street agent that you and I had to deal with forever? Are there these street agents out there that are just killing these kids' minds, or is it just overall NIL bag chasing and all that?
Well, I think that's a part of it, but we got to look at it a couple of ways here. There are a few good 7-on-7 guys and trainers that's heart is in the right place, and that situation is good for kids. And there are also several really bad high school coaches that don't do right by kids too. So I think that it was the same thing when I used to be involved with AAU basketball. we'll say, well, the AAU guy is the problem and the 7-on-7 guy is the problem. But there's a lot of high school coaches who are problems too. There's a lot of high school coaches that don't do right by their kids. There's a lot of high school coaches that don't check grades and don't make sure that their kids. There's a lot of JUCO coaches. Like I've dealt with a bunch of terrible JUCO coaches, right?
Sure.
So at the end of the day, I don't think that you can pin it to a certain demographic of coaches, but I just think that the people that are bad, people that aren't doing right by kids, you want to avoid them at all costs.
Fair, good point.
That's real, man. I want to ask you this too. Going back a little bit here, you know, we talk about JB brought up like the power of social media, and you brought up as well, Carl, how there's a thousand other ways, so to speak, where you can still buy your mama a house. What's your take on players, you know, who are active players, whether it's college or NFL, doing like these podcasts after the game, and you know, really using social media as like a platform to like make money? I know at the NFL level, like Michael Parsons, typically he has a podcast he does like I think after every game, just about. I know for Colorado, Travis Hunter has his own like I think podcast or some type of streaming that he does as well. Do you take issue with that? You know, obviously you're someone from the old school, different mentality, and it's a new age now. Me, I'm 29. I'm a little younger. I'm kind of the tweener of the current generation and the next one. So I don't have a problem with it, but would love to hear your perspective on it.
You know, the game has changed, and I think that you have to change with it, and you have to change the way that you look at it. Even when we were coming up, there were things that we did that guys that had came 20 years before us didn't like also. You know, they didn't like you to wear Nike socks. They didn't like you to wear the wristbands on your arms or whatever. It's always going to be something. There's always going to be some old dude telling a young dude that the way he's doing things is messed up. You know, that's part of life. A guy wins or he loses, and right after the game, he's shooting his podcast. You know, it's not ideal to me, but I also understand that that's the way that the game is today. And so it's not something that I'm going to get in a fight with you about. You know, my dad wouldn't allow me to have long hair. He said a man needs a short haircut and a hard face, right? You had to shave every day. He better not see the whiskers coming out. All three of my sons got dreadlocks, and I hate it, but I'm not going to get in a fight every day about it.
Right. That's a good point, man. I always say that too. Like, even with me, like I said, as a 29-year-old, I look at some of the stuff that the 18, 19-year-olds are doing. I'm like, man, y'all crazy. That's wild. I would have never done that. So I think, like you said, with each generation, you always going to look back and think what they're doing is wild. And I do think there's some truth to each generation saying that, but there's also just a matter of like us having like just that belief or that nostalgia for like the past and kind of just thinking the way we did things was the best way. You're always going to just think that. And whether it's true or not, that's neither here nor there.
Think about this. I used to not allow my players to use Twitter. And so I had a kid, Ronnie Perkins, he's on the Denver Broncos now. His older brother told me that I was being archaic and that I wasn't being fair by letting them use Twitter. So I let him get into it, and I got a Twitter account just to monitor it. And look how Twitter blew up for me. Look where all that tweeting got me. You know what I mean? But I had to listen to a kid at the time who was 17 years old who changed the way I look. So the way I looked at that situation. So sometimes, you know, I've been fortunate enough to make hundreds of thousands of dollars, you know, because I got on Twitter and took advantage of social media myself. But it took for a kid to open my eyes up to that way. That's where the game was going, and that's where recruiting was going. And so, you know, it ended up being a great situation. So you just have to be open, I think, to new ideas sometimes, even though it's not what you're used to.
I love it.
And let me ask you, Carl, before you get out of here, so we can help the common fan and all these guys out here that kind of don't understand this whole inner working of the portal versus like what's available out there. Or is high school and JUCO imploding in front of our very eyes right now, in your estimation?
Yeah, it's going to be really hard for a high school kid to get a scholarship now unless he's special. And they have to change the way that they look at going in. I have a kid right now that I just talked to his family last week. He had probably 8 group of 5 offers, but he's waiting. And now he has nothing on the table. You know, he had MAC, he had Sunbelt, he had some really good schools, but he thought he was good enough to play in the SEC, thought he was good enough to play in the Big Ten, and now he has nowhere to go. right? And so you have to look at it. If you're a player right now, you got a committable offer from an FCS, you got a committable offer from a group of 5 school. You got to say, if I want to play Power 5 ball, I'm just going to go to this place right here, and I'm going to prove myself. And then if I end up being good enough, I can move up if that's what I want to do, But for the most part, you have to be very, very aggressive in being able to take one of your offers if you get them early, or else you're going to be left with nothing.
Hey, there's 133 D1s that play football? 131? Yep. So out of that, explain to these people that they don't understand. So we get 3,000 enter the portal. There's only 131 D1s. They're not all taking 5 kids. They're taking 1 kid possibly. Let's just say every school that plays football at the Power 5 or at the Division I level took a kid. They took 130 kids out of 3,000. Like, the people understand, like, then that's not even happening. But what's happening right now with the kid that sits in the portal and versus the high school kid who did not get signed or did not go to a D1 out of high school? Because from what I understand, and I've been out the mix here, but I talk to everybody still. Are these high school kids really sitting out a year and not going JUCO and rather sit out and see what happens in the portal? Is that a real thing? Because that's what these guys are telling me.
There has been a couple of kids that have done that. I would say right now, if I was in high school and I didn't like the way my recruiting is going, I would go to a junior college as a qualifier, right?
Yeah.
And prove myself. Schools are still recruiting JUCO guys. They are still going into junior colleges. Now, it's going to be hard if you're a JUCO guy with a bunch of academic issues because you don't even have to pass the ACT anymore. So if you're in JUCO because you had all of these grade problems, you're gonna have to explain yourself. But if you went in as a late bloomer, as a full qualified guy that can go in and get right out, that's still a very, very viable option for you, and it's something that you should consider if you really want to play football. Now, a lot of guys, and this is another conversation for another day, a lot of guys don't really want to play football, right? They want to go to Alabama. But if they can't go to Alabama, they don't really want to play football.
They want the perks that comes with being at this school or saying that I'm here. You know what I mean? The girls, the NIL deals, just the social media clout for their pages, but they ain't really trying to be in them trenches for real. So
they don't want to they don't want tough love on a June day. You know what I mean? When it's 110 degrees outside, they don't want that.
Hey, Carl, when's the SAT? I know the SAT, ACT, that bylaw kicked in for COVID. Is there another year of that before?
No, it's done. It's done. They don't have to. You don't have to take that to qualify anymore at all.
So it's lifted forever.
It's lifted.
Wow!
That's wow!
You imagine all the hood homies that we grew up with that got fucked over, and now these cats. I don't think these cats realize what they got, dog. It's unbelievable to me.
I was stressed going. Now, granted, I had a good GPA and good grades, and they always told me like, if the better your grades were, the lower your ACT could be because it kind of balances out. But even for me as a high school athlete, I went in like nervous. I'm like, man, I got to get a good ass ACT score so I can go to school and go to college, and I had no issues. So that's actually huge, man. That changed the game.
And Carl, as you get out of here, and I know you got a busy schedule, I appreciate you jumping on again, man. Everybody follow Carl on Twitter and Instagram. Let me ask you something. Like, it was a culturally biased test anyway. Let's just keep it 100.
Absolutely.
I used to tell my players in the Midwest, you take the ACT. On the West Coast, I told all my brothers, inner city cats, take the take the SAT. And it's just so different because the science and the math was so much different from the ACT to the SAT, especially where you were demographically. People didn't realize that was a hustle in itself to get kids qualified. As a high school coach years ago for me, and then when I went to JUCO, then they bumped the GPA to 2.5. You can't tell me that this thing isn't rigged to keep these cats down either. And I've seen it firsthand. Like, why does Johnny go to chemistry class and have a 2.0 and get a fucking D1 scholarship on an academic, but my kid from fucking Gainesville has to have a 2.5 and get a full scholarship opportunity on football and have a harder academic rigor? Like, it didn't make no sense to me. It makes zero sense to me. And JUCO's kind of struggled with that over the last 10 years when they changed the 2.5 rule. So
the 2.5 rule out of JUCO, man, was crippling to a lot of kids. And we know who it was targeted for and what it was intended to do. It's something that I never understood. because I think when they did that, JB, and correct me when I'm wrong, you couldn't have a PE major either if you with your 2.5. Right?
You know, unless you declared a PE major at the 4-year, you couldn't take over 9 PE hours.
Right.
So it was so wild because I had to have kids declare as a PE major at the 4-year so they could take their PE credits, or those cats didn't count. And now I'm having to redo. That's why so many JUCO coaches, Carl, are screwing these kids because they don't know the rules. They don't know the hustle. They don't know how to help kids get out. Alan Edwards in the chat right now. Carl, you probably know Alan, JUCO. Some JUCO sites he runs. Here's the thing. Like, people don't realize, like, dog, you leaving this JUCO stuff 2.5 deal. Well, guess what? You better declare a major change, or why are kids in JUCO 3 and 4 years? I got 101 out in 3 years, all on time at the spring. You want a cat out in spring, so they're at Alabama in January, not in June. They'll never play. They'll never make the roster.
Absolutely.
So it's a tough deal, man. They don't, these coaches are, like I say, Carl, this is a meat market, and unfortunately, our babies are the pieces of meat in the market, and that's just what it is. And the more that they understand this, and the single mamas out here who struggle to turn a boy into a man, that they just don't grasp the concept that a lot of them struggle with. They used to love me. Take my baby, cuss his ass out, do whatever you had to. That's why I built the trust with the mama, not the kid. Right. Because when I get it tough on the kid and I'm gonna rip Jermaine Johnson's ass, guess what his mama doing? Coach, he ain't coming home.
Yeah, she gonna back you up on it.
Back you up. But these cats don't know how to recruit anymore. Carl, man, it's been a pleasure. We got to do some more stuff. I know you got the show and the pod and everything, so we gotta hook up. But I appreciate you jumping on here, man. I'm out here in Scottsdale for a couple of days. I'll be back home Wednesday. But anything you need from me, brother, let me know.
They told me that you took Grant Cardone's jet out there too, man. That's the room on the street.
Hey, he bougie out here, Carl. I don't know what it is, man. They be there, last chance you. He didn't, look at the view, Carl. Look at this.
Hey, I'm nice, brother.
I'm still in the trenches out here. I'm still in the hood, Carl. So, but
they say Netflix pays good, my brother.
Hey, I wouldn't know. This motherfucker treated me, brother, like a damn homeless man. They said, "Oh, just do this and give me $3 billion. I'll make $3 billion off you, but you go here struggle." And I'm like, "Oh, really? That's how the game works." Hey, Carl, man, if that show would have came out now in NIL era, shit, we'd all be set for life.
Hey, ain't no doubt. All right, y'all.